What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Dead Island 2. I want to talk about what's going on with Dead Island 2. Now, I've been doing these videos. This is part of kind of our summer coverage, going back over all these games that were, in a way, missing from E3 or, just flat out not there. But games that, kind of grabbed my attention that I really enjoyed discussing. And Dead Island 2 is definitely a game that I really do enjoy discussing for a variety of reasons. But again, I kind of want to talk about like the state of the game, what's going on with this game, because this has been a notorious game pretty much through its entire development cycle of what the heck is happening in terms of jumping studios, and it has jumped studios so many times. It's on the third studio now, and publisher-wise, people that actually, companies that have like stakes in Dead Island, there's like 4 or 5 of them. So there's so many things going on with Dead Island 2, and this is another E3, basically another year that we've heard nothing, that we've seen nothing, we've heard nothing. Now, we have heard over the last 6 months of this year that this game is still being made. That's about all that we've gotten. So recently, as even late May, Square Enix has said, like, this game is still in development, is still being made, it's still going on. But at this point, you've got to think, and now this game currently, right now, is being made from the makers of Crackdown 3, which that should worry you enough. The first studio that had control of this game was the studio that made Spec Ops: The Line, which out of the 3 studios that this game has been bouncing around, that studio is easily, I think, the most talented and has like the, and Spec Ops is a phenomenal game. I love Spec Ops. I think it was one of the best and most underrated, criminally underrated games of last generation, but now it's being made from the same people that, again, made Crackdown 3, which, is it their fault how Crackdown 3 came out? Well, I mean, it was a garbage game, but at the same time, Microsoft's handling of Crackdown and probably handling of that studio, you could also blame Microsoft. But bottom line is Dead Island 2, even though it's not the same game, and that's another thing, there's no way on this planet that Dead Island 2 is the same game that we saw back at E3 2014. If you remember, we saw the trailer, and we also saw a little bit of gameplay, which looked really good. Now, I hate, and I'll use that word, I hate Dead Island, the first Dead Island game. This was a game, to me, that, in my opinion, does have the best trailer of all time, and also the trailer that lied the most and conveyed the wrong message of what this game was going to be. I think it's notorious for that. I think it's notorious for being one of the best trailers of all time, but also being a trailer that just had nothing to do with what the game actually was about, besides the fact that there was the Easter egg of that family in the hotel that you start the game in. But besides that, there's nothing that correlates between these games. But Dead Island 1, complete disaster. I bought that game day one. I really, really didn't like it. It just wasn't the game for me. I know some people do like this game. Dead Island 2, really, even from the gameplay, and the gameplay looked really good. I'll say that. The gameplay made me actually believe that this game could be something. It honestly could be something. Now, the makers of Dead Island then went on to make Dying Light, a much, much better zombie game. It would be great if they would just take this game back, because I think they would do it right. But at this point, it's like, do you want Dying Light 2? Do you want Dying Light 3? Or do you want them to go back to Dead Island for some reason? But, Dead Island 2, I had faith in back in 2014. There's no way it's the same game. It's bounced around developers. Rumor has it that it dropped all things that it had going for it that we saw in 2014. It dropped that in 2016. So from 2016 on, it's a completely new game. And honestly, I feel like it's been redone again, and probably just jumping into like full-scale production, because if that studio has been making Crackdown 3, I don't think Dead Island, I almost said Dying Light, I don't think Dead Island is at the top of their priority list. I feel like it is now, maybe. And with, THQ Nordic, and this is the studio that obviously we've seen a lot of games come out from them or being announced to them over the past month. They made a really big point that they're reviving these franchises. SpongeBob having a Diablo-style Darksiders game, Destroy All Humans remake. So they're doing a lot of awesome things as a publisher. And so I do believe, and here's the thing, I do believe Dead Island 2 is going to happen. I do believe Dead Island 2 is going to come out. It's just, firstly, there's no way it's the same game we saw. It's probably going to be completely reimagined. If I were them, I would try and rip off Dying Light as much as I could without making it seem like it is just a spin-off of a Dying Light game. I would try and do that, because Dying Light found so much success, and not only was it well received, but people actually liked it, and people want more, and people still to this day play Dying Light and are very excited for Dying Light 2. I'm very excited for Dying Light 2. I'm very disappointed and upset that this game was actually delayed several months from the fall. Now it's coming out in the spring, so I really, really want that game. And also, you have to really, really question that this game needs to probably be a next generation game. Now, that kind kind of goes against, again, the publisher's wishes, where all these games that they're reviving, like I said, SpongeBob, Destroy All Humans, those games are coming out still on the current gen. They want them out on the current gen. This Diablo-style Darksiders game, you have to think, is really trying to come out on the current gen. So these remakes, these kind of bringing back to life these old franchises, they want them out now, not in 3 years, not on the PS5 and Xbox Scarlet. I'm sure they have games that they're working on and they're planning on coming out in a few years on those consoles, but these games, they kind of want them out now. And considering Dead Island was supposed to come out in 2015, then it was supposed to come out in the second half of 2016, this game is not a game I think that's even remotely close. I really don't. I feel like, again, what we saw is gone. It's not even that game anymore. So at this point, it's just a complete rework. And at this point also, again, I don't even feel like it's began full-scale production until like right now. So I would give it like 3 years from now to come out. That's honestly what I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like this is going to be an example of a game that technically got and is that fair to them? Technically, no. And is that fair to Dead Island, like the property? No. You announced it in 2014, June of 2014, and I truly do see this game being like a 2022 release. So it's like an 8 to 10 year game. And we have seen games that long. Kingdom Hearts almost did that. It was 6 years. Kingdom Hearts, it got close. I guess Duke Nukem, right? There's some examples of games that have gone through stuff like this, but Dead Island would be like one of the most notorious, like highly thought of games, or like known. People know about this game. It's going to be one of those higher ones because, again, like an 8-year development cycle. And was it really 8 years? No. When it comes down to it, when the game actually comes out, I'm sure we'll find out this game has only been in making like 3 to 4 years. We just started making it 3 to 4 years ago, and the game may actually turn out to be fine, and we can kind of throw out the first 5 years of going through this saga because it didn't really matter. It was just jumping. Now, I guess the question I have is, what actually happened? And there's a really nice article from, I think, Games Radar, and I was reading his work, and he tried to interview a lot of people from these studios that used to have their hands on it. And there's even rumors that it's being worked on by another game development studio, kind of like helping out. So, and that's not confirmed. That's just a rumor from somebody he talked to. But if you go read that, just type in like Games Radar Dead Island 2, you'll find it. I think it came out in like February. Really, really good. And one of the things he he didn't really even mention, but I also really want to know is like what, and we'll never find this out, by the way, what actually happened. You have this studio, makers of Spec Ops, and they're making the game, and then all of a sudden they were taken off of it, and it was because kind of like creative differences. Their thought of what this game was going to be didn't match up to what the publisher wanted, and it jumped, and then it jumped again. So like, what literally happened? Like, what kind of game was it? And I guess, again, like the gameplay we saw was the closest that it actually probably got close to being made, right? So like right now, where the game is right now is less in terms of like development than what we saw back at E3 2014. I believe that. And so it's like, well, what happened with that game? Like what was the actual difference? Did they not like it? Did it not work? Were they trying to tell like a very serious story, and they're like, that's not what Dead Island is. Dead Island is a stupid game, and I agree with that. But I would like it to be changed. I have a feeling that game may actually be better than the game we get. And that game, that vision, may have been actually too serious and too like good for them in a way. And that's kind of crazy to believe, but I truly think, especially coming from the makers of Spec Ops, if you know what Spec Ops is, it is that kind of game. It's a very serious, it's a very story heavy, it's kind of like a political kind of thing, messes with your mind. It's such a fantastic game, and if you put them on Dead Island, firstly, I mean, you have to respect what Dead Island is, I guess, in terms of gameplay, so you're not going to have a shooter, right? But in terms of kind of atmosphere and tone, if they took what they got from Spec Ops and put it in there, I guess that would kind of be very, very different from what Dead Island was, and maybe they just said, hey, this isn't the kind of game it is. And, Dying Light is more of that, taking a more serious, it's not entirely like that, you still have a lot of fun in that game, but it's a little bit more grounded. It's not as like cartoony, and not that Dead Island is necessarily cartoony, but you know what I mean. So Dead Island 2, so much has happened in this game. I really do want to see it. I think at this point we are so far away from seeing it, though, it's not even funny. I think we'll see games like BioShock 4 and the next Batman game and Rocksteady's game and this Harry Potter Magic Awakened. I think we're going to see all of those games before we see Dead Island 2 again. I think Dead Island 2 is around 1.5 to 2 years away from being seen, and again, 3 to 4 years away from actually releasing. I do think we'll get it. I think this game will come out, but again, 2022, 2023, like 8 to 10 years after this game first got announced, which is absolutely crazy. But guys, let me know in the comments below, what do you think? What's happened to Dead Island 2, and are you still looking forward to this game? What did you think of the first game? You know, I've talked a lot about on the channel that I really don't like the first game, but maybe you guys did. Let me know. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel Podcast Now. Hit that bell icon so you guys know when these videos go up, and thank you as always for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.